Good evening. My name is Ann Moriarty. I'm the chair of the Pinole Planning Commission, and this is the regular meeting on Monday, April 24th at 7 p.m. And let's go ahead and before we call the meeting to order, if you would like to watch the meeting, you can watch that live on channel 26 and access that through the City of Pinole website at ci.pinole.ca.us. You may also access watching the meeting via Zoom, and the webinar ID for that is 865-0537-5301. If you need to reach that by phone instead of online, you can use the phone number 669-900-6833. If you need to submit public comment, you may do that by contacting David Hannum at dhanham@ci.pinole.ca.us. And of course, you may attend the meeting in person if you wish. Let's see, any person wishing to speak on an item listed on the agenda may do so when we ask for comments in favor of or in opposition to the item under consideration. After all of those persons wishing to speak have done so, the hearing will be closed and the matter will be discussed amongst the commission prior to rendering a decision. If you would like to appeal any action of the Planning Commission or of the planning manager, you may file an appeal with the city clerk in writing within 10 days of the action. And following the public hearing, the city council then may act to confirm, modify, or reverse the action of the Planning Commission. The cost to appeal a decision is $500 and a minimum $2,500 deposit fee. Tim, we have you down here. Yeah. With that, I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask that we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. In addition, before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Ohlone people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Ohlone elders, past, present, and future, who call this place Ohlone land, the land that Pinole sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Ohlone community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Mr. Hannah, may we have the roll call?
Yes, Madam Chair. Commissioner Menes.
Here, and would this be the point to do ex parte comments? After roll call.
Yeah.
Okay.
After roll call.
Here.
Commissioner Benzuli.
Here.
Commissioner Kern.
Here.
Commissioner Benuelos.
Here.
Vice Chair Martinez.
Here.
Chair Moriarty.
Present.
All the commissioners are present tonight. We can take action on all items.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any citizens to be heard?
There are none at this moment here.
Great, thank you very much. And then we shall go to approval of the Planning Commission meeting minutes from March 27th, 2023. Do we have any comments before we call for the motion? Yes, Commissioner Menes.
Yes, comments. Very quick test. Can people hear me? Okay. It's slightly less feedback than usual, so I want to double check. There we go. Okay. So first off, I'd want to make my usual ex parte notes. I sent out a message that this meeting was happening and discussing briefly the contents of this meeting to my usual email list, as was noted in the minutes for the last meeting. I also had some brief discussions related to the topic we'll be discussing in item G1 with Vice Chair Martinez a few months ago, I think. I forget the exact time or frankly the details of the discussions. It's been a while ago. But I figured since I had the discussions, it would be good to disclose that for Brown Act purposes and so on and so forth. So on to my comments about the minutes. I have a few modifications I'd like to request be made. First, on page 6, line number 32, it states that I said that data supported the production of very low income units. I said the data did not support the production of very low income units. And then on page 10, line 9. When I made the comment about the first time the draft housing element had been discussed, the site zone for affordable housing, and it was some of the sites, not all, were in the Pinole Valley, but it says were not here, which is exactly what I didn't say. So I wanted to make sure that those 2 points were noted for adjustment.
Could you clarify on line 9, what would you like it to read?
On line 9, I'd like for the word not to be struck.
Okay, you didn't add the word some.
No.
Okay. And those are your only
Those are all my only
comments?
changes. Yes.
Great, thank you very much. Any other commissioners have any comments? Hey, could we entertain a motion, please?
So moved.
No, I'll make a motion to approve the planning commission meeting minutes from February 27th, 2023, with the 2 exceptions that Commissioner Menace mentioned.
Good, I'll second.
Great, thank you. And with that, any other comments?
Good question. The exceptions means it'll be modified, assuming that my recollection matches up with the recordings. Great.
Yes. Okay, planning manager Hannum.
Sure. Commissioner Menace,
Aye.
Commissioner Benzuli,
Aye.
Commissioner Current,
Aye.
Commissioner Benuelos.
Aye.
Vice Chair Martinez,
Abstain.
Chair Moriarty.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0 with 1 abstention.
Great, thank you very much. Then we will move on to the public hearing. And again, just for those who are watching, we'll read that item and then we'll open the public hearing to see if there's any discussion that we need to have as far as from the chair. And after that, when we allow folks to speak, we'll go for persons in favor and then persons opposed. Then we will close that public hearing and we'll discuss it and then we will vote. So with that, then the hearing before us is a conditional use permit, CUP 23-02, which is a parking reduction at 612 Tennant Avenue and 600 Tennant Avenue and 2279 Park Street. Let's see. The applicant is Leonard Williams and Shane Pasco. Mr. Hannum, could we have our description of the item, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is this thing on? Okay. See, okay, there we go. Yes, before you tonight is a conditional use permit for parking reduction at 600 Tennant, 612 Tennant and 2279 Park Street. The owners of the property, Mr. Leonard Williams is 612 Tennant, and the owners of 600 Tennant is Baljeet Dhaliwal. The applicant for this project is Maria Campos from KLC Engineering, who is representing both parties on this application. As stated, the parking is located at 610 and 612 tenant where we're reducing. The total area of the parcels is 10,000 square feet. Each parcel is 5,000 square feet individually, but we're taking them together. It has an old town sub area, general plan land use, and a specific plan sub area of Old Town in the San Pablo corridor. Is the PowerPoint ready to go? Is it up? 'Cause I had a PowerPoint. So I'll continue until that's up. There we go. Thanks. So kind of give you in terms of the area, if you go to the first slide. Do the slideshow. Okay, so pretty much there, those projects are located on Tenant. The old Collins building is located at 612 Tenant. The old Blackie's restaurant is at 600 Tenant, and of course, the 279 Park Street was the home that the property owners had for Blackie's. They lived there, that no longer there. So that's all one parcel. Those units. So pretty much in terms of the project description, I'll kind of give you some background. The two parcels were properties that were acquired by the city's former redevelopment agency. And after the redevelopment agency disbanded in 2012, the city was required to obtain a successor agency, which these parcels went into, and were required to sell the property. The city sold 600 Tenant and 2279 Park Street to Mr. Dollywall. And 612 Tenant is in a purchase sale agreement with Mr. Williams as the potential owner. But as of now, the city still owns the property, from my understanding. As part of this entitlement and as part of them issuing a building permit, that's when Mr. Williams will take ownership of the property. Both properties are located within the Old Town sub area of the 3 corridor specific plan. And both are zoned, they're all zoned residential mixed use. If you can go to the next slide, please. So basically there's both properties have the general plan Old Town sub area. Both of them have the specific plan Old Town area. And again, both of them have the zoning, which is a residential mixed use, which allows for 20.1 to 35 dwelling units per acre. So go to the next slide, please. So just kind of gives you an idea of some of the existing land uses in the vicinity. You have Christ the Lord Church, which is right across the street from 2279 Park Street, which has been existing. You have the Pinole Youth Center and the Community Playhouse, of course, to the east of the property, as well as to the south. You have some AT&T utility parcels plus the city parking lot, and of course, you've got some existing residential to the west of the parcel. So next slide, please. Okay. So right now what we're doing is as part of this project, we are required that the project be consistent with the general plan and the specific plan. And staff put together a number of policies and procedures through different elements of the plan, through the community character element, the housing element, as well as the sustainability element. Put some goals and policies together that would make this project consistent. We went through, as part of those policies and goals, is preserve the strength and the identity and quality of Pinole residential neighborhoods, to maintain Pinole's unique qualities and sense of place, and to preserve established historic and small town character of the city. And you'll know that these buildings are not being they're not being expanded. They're being in their consistent form. There will be some modifications to the storefront, what would be the old storefront with the single family units, but it's maintaining the same materials and they're replacing doors with windows and stuff. So it kind of will maintain the same type of frontage that it has before. It provides adequate residential sites to accommodate projected housing needs. And of course, these 2 units will provide another 5 housing units to the city. At this point, the 2 1-bedrooms are allowed to go, are market rate, can be market rate. Whereas on the 612, that's at 600 Tenant, and 612, as part of our inclusion area, they will have one unit that will be allowed to be affordable. to 80% of median income. The other 3 would be considered market rate. So again, that would cover some areas that we were actually short in terms of the housing element when we discussed the element a couple of weeks ago. So we're becoming more consistent with our regional housing allocation. In terms of the specific plan, it's a couple of land use policies that were in the specific plan that basically, this project provides a variety of housing types throughout the site plan area. It provides affordable housing within the plan area, consistent with the city's general plan and housing element, and that when possible, preserve and receive historic buildings. Again, 612 tenant, which the considered the old Collins house is the outside is not being it's being painted and it's being upgraded that way, but it's not. It's still going to be restored to its regular footprint that you see today. As part of their plan. In terms of zoning ordinance consistency, and that's kind of where this next slide goes to. In terms of there were 2 pretty much requirements for the city in this thing because the buildings aren't being moved, and so the setbacks and height and all this, what we would consider normal development standards are not being augmented. Really, the two development standards that are considered the density and, of course, the parking standard. So with the current and proposed use of the subject sites, as stated before, 600 tenant and 2279 is a single story vacant restaurant with attached single family home. That's what it is right now. And it has a 2-story detached 2-car garage with a single apartment above right now. The proposed use is basically a single story multifamily structure with three residential units, two 1-bedroom units and 1 3-bedroom unit. So now it qualifies as a multifamily unit as part of because of the 3 units. And of course, they still will maintain the 2-story garage with a single unit on above. So basically equates to 2 additional units on the property. Whereas on 612 tenant, it's a 2-story structure with a vacant former commercial space on the first floor and a single family residential unit on the second floor. And it does have a detached garage, 2-car garage, small, but it's considered a 2-car garage. With it being proposed, the new proposal is a 2-story structure with 2 residential units on the first floor and 2 residential units on the second floor. So it's a total of 4 units, of course, with the 1-story detached garage. We'll like to say that all of the units on the second in 612 tenant are 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units. So, and of course, and they will add 3 additional units to our housing stock. So with this proposal of adding 5 units is currently consistent with the underlying uses allowed in our zone district. In terms of development standards, we talk about the parking. I kind of put the parking requirements on that is the existing parking requirement as listed in our Pinole Municipal Code. Table 17.48050-1 basically requires 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit. 1 space must be covered or garaged, plus 0.3 spaces per dwelling unit for visitor parking. We've got 2 assigned spaces for multifamily, 2 plus bedroom units, 2 assigned spaces per dwelling unit. 1 space must be garage plus 0.3 per dwelling unit in the visitor parking. If you go to the next slide, Dave, please. There's also, as part of the specific plan, and both of these these are general requirements that are in the specific plan, and basically states that the parking requirements are established by the Pinole Municipal Code, but that to attract development and enhance the pedestrian environment, parking requirements shall be reduced when 1 or more of the following conditions exist. And they list the 5. They list the 5 conditions that need to exist, and the project just needs to meet 1 of them out of the 5. So with that, staff has gone into more detail, and I'll be getting into this just shortly, but looking at those 5 conditions as part of the specific plan to show that parking shall be reduced. So it's not a question of if, it shall be. So if we meet 1 of those findings. To what level, I know that it'll be up to the commission to do that, say that, but there will be, at least based on the rest of the staff report. In terms, if you go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is pretty much, this is how the required parking and proposed parking reduction for Tenant Avenue. So we're looking at approximately, right now existing, this is just for 600 tenant. We include 2279 Park Street because they're all on the same parcel. And so we have to include those. 2279 has met their parking requirement. They have a 2-car garage that's slated for that unit. So they've met their parking requirement. So when we talk about the parking requirements right now, we're talking about 600 tenant. And right now they have no parking. The commercial component of the property didn't require on-street, off-street parking. However, now that they're turning it to residential, now that has come into play. And they are required to have, based on the parking requirement we just had, they're required to have a total of 4 parking spaces, 2 uncovered and 2 covered. And that's based off of the 1.5 dwelling units per acre, which is three parking stalls plus 1 for a guest. They are proposing 1, which is an uncovered parking space on the side of the on the side, which is as part of your site plan. I think you can see on the 600 tenant. And so they are requesting a reduction of 3 parking spaces. If you go to the next slide, Dave. 612 tenant, a little different. They right now have existing because of the last parking. They only had 2 units. They were only required 4 parking spaces. They had that as part of the garage. They were in compliant. As part of the new project, they are required 6 uncovered and 4 covered for a total of 10 spaces. And basically how we came to that was and it's outlined in your staff report, is that based on the two cars per dwelling unit, they're required 8 parking stalls plus the 0.3. It equals about 1.2 parking stalls for guests, which then adds up to 10 regarding the guests and the covered and the uncovered stalls. They are proposing to keep the remaining 2 uncovered and 2 covered for 4, and they're asking for a reduction of 9 parking spaces. So between the 2 properties, they're asking for a total of 9 spaces. So they're reducing 4 of the uncovered parking spaces, and they're requesting 2 of the covered spaces to be removed for a total of 6 spaces. So between the 2 projects, it's a total of 9. Go to the next slide, Dave. And so in terms of parking requirements, and this is why we're here, it's part of the parking standard in section 17.48060. The code allows for a reduction in parking with a conditional use permit. As part of the code, the planning commission is required to find that 3 out of these 4 are to be met for findings as part of the reduction process. So with that, in terms of A, where the use will be adequate served by proposed parking due to nature of the proposed operation, proximity to the frequent transit service, transportation characteristics of persons residing, working, or visiting the site, or because the applicant has undertaken a travel demand management program that will reduce parking demand at the site. Staff, we responded to that finding is based on the site's proximity to transit and the implementation of a travel demand management program, residential use will be adequately served by the on-site parking proposed, as well as off-site parking and transit availability. Subject sites are approximately 0.2 miles, which is about a 6-minute walk, roughly, from the nearest bus stop at the intersection of San Pablo and Oak Ridge Road, and just over a quarter mile, about a 7-minute walk from the bus stops on San Pablo near John Street. So they have got it both ways. And Tenant Avenue. The close proximity to the public parking lots, rather along Tenant near the subject sites, also allow for visitors of both properties to park in the lots rather than on the actual sites. As a condition of approval, the applicant will be completing a travel demand management program that will reduce demand at the site. And based on analysis above, the use will be adequately served by the proposed parking, and the criteria has been met. So staff feels that this has been met based on that criterion. On B, the parking demand generated by the project will not exceed the capacity or have a detrimental impact on the supply of on-street parking in the surrounding area. Staff response to this finding is that the Old Town Parking and Pedestrian Study completed in March of 2020, which is attachment C of your staff report. Basically states that parking in Old Town Pinole is underutilized. The Old Town study shows that there are 177 public parking spaces along Tennant Avenue from San Pablo Avenue to Buena Vista Drive. Of those spaces, 120 are in public parking lots, private parking lots, and with another 57 that are along Tennant. There are 57 on street, what we call on street, within walking distance of 600 Tennant and 2279 Park and 612 Tennant. Based on the information from the study, the Old Town area is expected to be able to accommodate the parking demands associated with the creation of a net of 5 additional residential units at the 2 subject sites and associated reduction of 9 parking spaces. Based on the analysis above, the parking demand generated by the uses will not have a detrimental impact on the on-street parking, and the criterion has been met. And on finding C, which is the site plan is consistent with the objectives of the zoning district and incorporates features such as unobtrusive off-street parking places below the ground levels of the project with commercial uses above or close the parking on the ground floor. The site plans of the existing buildings are consistent with the objectives of the zoning district. The 2 properties contain existing structures where interior improvements will be made to renovate the existing buildings for residential use. Parking is accommodated where possible based on the existing footprints of the buildings. Since the subject parcels are established parcels and older existing structures to be retained, site plans have designed around the existing footprints to accommodate off-street parking as feasible. Proposed parking areas meet the objectives of the zoning district. The staff feels that this criterion has been met. In terms of D, we feel that staff feels that the criterion is not needed to be evaluated since the first 3 have been met. So we feel that the first 3 have been met and the findings can be made, which then takes us to section, if you go to the next slide, Dave. Section 17.120.140. Oh, there's the parking spaces right there. So this is the off street where all the spaces are. And this is the source we got this from was from the Old Town Parking and Pedestrian Safety Study. The off-street parking, those are all existing parking lots, the 592 Tennant Avenue, 635 Tennant Avenue, and 648 Tennant Avenue are all within walking distance. The 22 spaces at 592 is the Christ O Lord Church parking lot, which I think the city has an access agreement with Fernandez Park and that to be able to use that site. 635 Tennant, which is the parking lot on the opposite side of where the rec center and the old community theater and the youth center is over there. And of course, the 648 Tennant is the parking lot just adjacent to 612 Tennant, which is right there. And they have 63 spaces available there. And then the east-west sides of Tennant Avenue from San Pablo, there's an additional 57 spots. And that's where we get to 177 within about 1.1 miles. I mean, all of these are very close and centered around these 2 parcels. So people that are visiting, people that are coming and going can easily get in and out of there with all the parking that's available around the area. We go to the next slide, Dave. Okay, so as part of this project and the conditional use permit, the commission is required to make the standard findings that we would with a conditional use permit out of section 17.12.140. And with that, there are 4 findings that need to be made. Listed those 4 findings in your staff report. And as finding A, the proposed use is consistent with the general plan, any applicable specific plans and applause and applicable provisions of this title. Staff's response is that the reduction of parking for the 2 subject parcels is consistent with the general plan, specific plan, and all applicable provisions of the zoning ordinance. This is due to the fact that there's a public transit within a quarter mile of the subject site. Residents will be able to walk, bike, or scoot to services, eateries, retail, professional offices, parks, recreational centers. And based on that, staff feels this finding has been met. In terms of the establishment, in terms of B, the establishment's maintenance or operation of the use applied for will not, under circumstances of the particular case, location, site design, operating characteristics, be detrimental to the health, safety, peace, moral comforts, or general welfare of persons residing, working in the neighborhood of such use, or to the general welfare of the city. Staff responded by the approval of the reduction of parking as a subject area of the Old Town will not be detrimental to the health, safety, peace, moral comfort, or general welfare of the persons residing or working in the area in the neighborhood. The 2020 Old Town Parking and Pedestrian Safety Study showed that there is enough parking in the area to accommodate for reduction of 9 off-street parking spaces at the subject sites. Staff feels based on that this finding has been met. In terms of C, the site proposed use is physically suitable for the type of density and intensity of the use. This is more of a housing or a building. If you're building a building on the property, we feel that the parking reduction is suitable for this type of density and intensity as related structures that are being proposed. And again, the specific plan also calls for if we meet some of those findings that parking shall be reduced in that area. In terms of D, that it will not be contrary to the specific intent clauses, development regulations, or performance standards established for the zoning district in which it is located. The proposed use and related structures are compatible with all other land uses, transportation and service facilities in the vicinity. Proposed reduction in parking for the plan redeveloped residential structures would be compatible with other uses in the vicinity. There are no proposed modifications to the existing structures, footprints, or building envelopes. With that, staff, in terms of the environmental reviews, the project is exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act. The project is determined to be categorically exempt under section 15.15332 of the CEQA guidelines because it involves infill development consistent with applicable general plan and zoning designation and regulations, and it occurs on a site of no more than 5 acres, surrounded by urban uses, has no value as habitat, will not result in significant impacts, and can be served by utilities and public services. And with that, staff recommends that this planning commission adopt resolution 23-03 for conditional use permit 23-02, conditionally approving the reduction of off-street parking requirements of 9 off-street parking requirements for 600 Tenant Avenue, 2279 Park Street, and 612 Tenant Avenue. With that, that's all I have in my report. If you have any questions, I will be happy to answer those.
Great, thank you, Planning Manager Hannum. Let's go ahead and see if there are any questions of Mr. Hannum. Let's start with Mr. Benzuli.
A couple of questions. Just one is more of a educational thing. The Blackies was originally a commercial space and now it's being zoned for residential. Was it just kind of like how does?
Well, it was always zoned as a residential. The residential mixed use allows for a 51% residential and 49% commercial. So it's just the opposite of the commercial mixed use. However, the specific plan allows parcels that have that residential mixed use to be 100% residential. So that's where now that we're switching the use from a commercial to a residential, it's still allowed under the zoning ordinance.
In the past 10 years or so since this property has been available, is there any other types of options proposed for this site that didn't involve densifying the residential space?
I mean, for the commercial or the commercial,
The whole property is.
There hasn't been any. I mean, there hasn't been any.
So the properties were marketed by the city council for sale, and if I recall correctly, the first time around there wasn't really anyone interested in the properties. It could have been the timing, but then it was remarketed and there was some interest. In the city council chose the proposal that it felt was the most appropriate, and that could be based on a number of factors related to the price and the what was proposed for the property.
Okay. And
Most of the uses that were proposed were residential. So the commercial, it didn't really get any bites as commercial as Blackies was the commercial component. There was no interest at all with that. We had the first set of proposals were all residential, making it some type of residential, either more units or less units. And there was no discussion of tearing down the buildings and building brand new. I mean, there was always that the structures were the structures, at least from my understanding, that, and we didn't get any proposals that would tear down and build a whole new building.
And the last question I have is I think it's item B. If we approve the conditional use, it expires on April 24th of 2024. If it doesn't get extended or they don't submit an extension, what happens then? Because you don't have parking.
Well, as part of this, maybe Alice can help me out too, but they are applying for building permits to activate the use. So in this case, because once they activate the building permit, then this conditional use permit would kick in terms of that we would be reducing the parking based on those.
It's only good for 1 year.
Well, that's
Once they activate it, then it's permanent and runs with.
Okay. 'Cause it doesn't-
So it's just if they never move forward with developing it. then it
Yeah.
would-
Okay. Okay, but they don't have to come back again, or if they fail to come back, it somehow.
No,
voids out.
once it's activated, and invests, it then runs with the land indefinitely into the future.
All right, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Benzuli. Commissioner Current.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. One of the things that I'm trying to get a hold of is is requirement of implementation of a travel demand management program or TDM for this site. I usually associate TDMs with a larger project or with a business or something like that, where you're having carpooling or bus passes or whatever. I'm trying to get a handle on how what a TDM for a small site like this would be.
Well, it'd just be kind of a smaller site. What we've asked the project owner or the property owners is that when their tenants move in, because these two properties are together in this conditional use permit. So really, we're looking at both properties to participate in, there could be ride share between the two parts, between people within that building, or carpooling or something like that, where that would happen. So, and also letting them know about the transit, the transit agents, the transit bus stops that are within this select area, and the also potential job opportunity. So there's going to be a number of different, we haven't really seen what it's going to look. It would be on a much smaller scale than would say a Vista Woods or a Pinole Vista per se, but it's the same concept in terms of looking at, maybe getting some bus ticket, maybe because they're going to be rentals. So the property owner would be responsible for, getting these guys maybe some bus passes or something of that nature, so that they wouldn't need a car for the area. So that's kind of how, but yeah, I know what you're saying. It's a big plan for this little itty bitty place, but they can still do the same concepts. It's just on a much smaller scale. So the property owners will be responsible for doing that. So that's.
Okay. And my second question is that I'm really troubled by the way parking's being handled at 612 Tenet Avenue, where it seems to be, I can't figure it out, to be quite honest with you. Is there tandem parking going there? Or how is the parking situation going to be handled at 612 Tenet? Because I'm looking at attachment B, page 803, and it looks like a very unviable situation to have parking where you have, looks to me like tandem parking. So can I get a clarification on what's going on there?
Yeah, pretty much they didn't show is that those two cars should have been showed in the garage, the first two cars. So they didn't show those in the garage. At least I can't, I don't put my glasses. So they tried to put like 6 cars on there, but that was this is part of their original plan. There are 2 cars in the garage. They can only fit an additional 2. We told them that the 2 additional cars have to come off. So because they can't, all the driving around up on that driveway, the driveway is pretty thin. And even if they widened it out to the full maximum, they really only have room to have 1 tandem on there. So 612 Tenet, we'll have the 2 cars in the garage. We'll have 2 covered parking in the garage, and then they will have either a tandem 2 cars on the outside or a tandem behind the 2 cars in the garage. So that was kind of how I kind of got lost in that. So there'll be 4 cars there. It's just what configuration they'll have what it shows here. So we kind of mix and match some different things there, and they should have taken off a couple of the cars because to be honest, because they can only really get 4 cars on there.
Yeah, I'm very uncomfortable with what's the diagram here
Yeah.
is, and
Yeah.
I know that this project, I don't know, is it going through design review? At some point, if we approve this project today, are we just or this resolution today, are we just approving the reduction of parking spaces or
Yes.
we're not approving the design? Because there's no way I would approve what I see here,
Yeah, no, it's just the reduction of of parking.
Okay, all right. Thank you. That's all I have.
Good catch, Commissioner Current. Thank you, Vice Chair Martinez.
Thank you. Dave, if memory serves me correct, this particular parcel, Blackie's, if I remember right, it was deeded in perpetuity that we would keep Blackie's as a commercial restaurant business. Is that a correct statement?
No, we have, at least I'll have to formalize that with Alex, but we've never seen where it's been deed restricted to keep it for the commercial component.
There's no deed restriction.
Yeah.
On the sale of it, there was no deed restriction?
Yeah.
Okay. We're confident of that?
Yep.
Then the other part is on the 2279 Park Street. The apartments that sit above the 2 parking above the garage. One of the things that we have seen in the community is the folks that are living there are not using those garages as garages. They're being used as storage. So what we in essence have is on Park Street, they're taking up the parking spaces. The garages are 2 more parking spaces that are being lost, that are not being used because nobody can park in front of them.
Right.
So I think we might want to give some consideration to the owners to really work with those tenants to actually use those garages for the intended purpose. And I say that because when folks in the community are using Fernandez Park on the weekends and there's a baseball game and such, parking does get a little bit tight around there. And I want to make sure that we try to maintain as much of the parking capacity as possible at all times in that particular area. So those would be the only 2 things that I see would be of concern for me tonight.
And that's something that we might be able to put in the TDM. I don't know, Alex, maybe that's something that we could put in a TDM, that they are required to park in the garage or use the garage structures. That's something we can do.
Think about a way to make that feasible. I mean, your concern is very valid. It's, a very common problem about how to make not just in rental properties and ownership, properties. How do you make folks use their garage for parking? We can give that some thought. I don't know if that's the right vehicle.
Okay. Take a look at that and see what we can do on that.
Great, thank you.
Good catch, Vice Chair Martinez. Got some good catches here. Let's go to Commissioner Banuelos.
Okay, first, a couple of things. There was a project at one time where they were going to tear a whole thing down and rebuild it. You guys were talking about, well, maybe it wasn't, maybe it was, but there was one.
Well, it wasn't at least within the last couple
It was
of
10 years
proposals.
ago.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Yeah.
that's why I know about it.
Yeah.
And so, but that was just one of many that floated in and out of there.
Okay.
I agree with David. I have a real problem with that parking there, but I had a question. Did the building department look at this?
Yes.
Because, but the problem I have it's on 610 Avenue, that parking space that's there, where it is blocking the door. You're supposed to have at least like a landing space in front of at least 3 feet. Whether it could be 3 feet by 3 feet, that's residential. If it was commercial, you'd add an accessible space, so I wouldn't count that. But that car there blocks that doorway. So, a fireman would go through a window, like an egress window or whatever, but so no one could ever get a stretcher through there if there was someone needing to get pulled out of there and that car was parked there. So I have a real problem with that. To the point where if you decided to take one less parking space off, I would go for that just for the safety value on that.
I would say get rid of that parking space altogether as well.
Okay.
The other, the thing, and then so that was that. And yeah, I was going to say something very similar to what David said about the parking on the other property. It's like there's too many.
Yeah.
Whether you have the cars in the garage or you have them out in the driveway, it's still the problem.
Yeah.
So that was my only things. Now, this little 2-unit building in the front where the Blackies was, you guys, it was sufficient enough to just look at without having to have the design committee look at that? It's pretty basic in terms of.
Yeah, because it wasn't in terms of the square footage, total square footage that they were looking at didn't require us to do that.
So, because that's going to be new, right?
It should be 2 1-unit, 2 1.
Yeah, so you're gonna tear the Blackies down and put something there instead.
Well, no, they're not gonna tear down. Well, they're gonna tear down the interior of Blackies, and then because everything in here is interior improvements.
Oh, okay.
So they're not tearing it down and putting a new structure. They're using the existing structure, and they're changing some doors and some windows out. So that
Okay, because 10 years ago, I remember looking through that, and if you blew hard enough, that whole building would fall over. Well, has that been kind of vetted out in terms of
from the building department, the building department's
with the way it
been,
is?
yeah, they've been looking
I
at
thought
this.
there were like massive problems with that building.
Well, they're doing some improvement. They're like, for example, they'll be building a new firewall along
Yeah, between the units.
between the units. That's all going to be all brand new. They're also from what I understand, I haven't seen the building plans, or I haven't looked at them carefully, but from what the building official has told me is that they're also beefing up some of the stuff along the front. There was some weakness there, and between the 2 units themselves, there'll be additional firewalls between the 2 units, the 2 1-bedroom units. So there'll be additional new, and all of it will be new construction. So because they're going to be getting out pretty much, getting the whole facility.
Yeah, because there's getting sheer across that front wall on the street with all those windows is going to be a real trip.
Yeah.
And it could be a real expense because that's not going to be, it may not be conventional framing. This is kind of like 2 little ADUs put together, slammed together.
It's kind of sort of, yeah.
What is the square footage of these units?
I want to say they're 800.
Okay, yeah, they're like 2
2.
ADUs. So. Oh, I'm doing ADU, it's 300 square feet. So.
Yeah.
That's a typical average ADU size. That's right in the center of.
But what I'm saying is, looking at this, it doesn't look like 800 square feet.
Yeah.
And
They could be, they could be, I'm not quite sure what it is, but from what I
Yeah,
understand.
We
I'm
do
saying-
have
I'm
parking.
gonna say more like.
We're talking about parking tonight, so.
Yeah.
let's keep that
Well,
in mind.
in my mind, because this is what I do, this is all connected. One thing is a domino effect. One thing works with another, and one thing causes another. Dave Parent picked the main problem right off the bat, and that just starts a domino effect amongst this whole thing. So that's how I look at these things. Those are my comments for the moment. That's my question. Just the building department really look at this. To me, it looked like they didn't.
Well, I mean, they have the building plans in these were just conceptual plans that were brought for this
Okay,
particular
well,
project.
that kind of makes me think we're not seeing the whole story.
Well, no, I
In my
mean,
mind,
these
I'd
are,
wanna see the whole picture.
well, but this item is for the reduction of parking. It's not for the design review of the building.
Yeah, I know it's that, but in my mind,
Oh.
it's all the same.
I mean, we do have the plans. I think they're in-house. So if you want to come and take a look at the plans, we do have them.
Yeah,
Or-
and this is a kind of like a planning zoning thing, people blocking that doorway. Usually, a typical planning department will make sure you had a walkway out of that door. So I'm a little surprised if that's not being picked up. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I would look a little harder at this if I were you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Banuelos, Commissioner Menace.
So Commissioner Banuelos's questions just addressed some of mine. I'd like to sort of go off of that a bit. It seems like a lot of the challenges that we're facing are sort of related to the definition of this as a multifamily project, but it seems like a lot of this seems to essentially be a lot like sort of what the SB 9 lot division and ADU construction allows for. So would it be possible to reframe it as sort of SB9 lot break and ADU construction to mitigate the parking requirements that way? Because I know the city has much less stringent requirements for ADUs than it does for multifamily dwellings.
I mean, I can kind of, if you want to.
There would be no way to do an SB9 project. 4 units is too much without a lot split. I don't know off the top of my head, but lot split requires egress to places that there might not be access to the right of way, that there might not be recorded easements, lots of things that may not be feasible on a property of this size.
In regarding ADUs, you're only allowed one ADU, either a JADU or an ADU. So these 2 1-bedroom units wouldn't be able to classify as an ADU.
But aren't there more than two units there now? Existing?
No, there's only 1 unit. There's only 2279. The way the property is existing on 600 tenant 2279 Park, which is the same parcel.
Mhm.
You have the restaurant and you have the house with a unit upstairs of the garage.
So there are 2 units.
Yes.
The one over the garage and the one in the house. So doesn't that by definition mean when you have like I guess it's kind of a stretch to call it a duplex because they're not necessarily equal, but I thought if you had 2 units, you're allowed to have 2 ADUs.
You can have one ADU and then you can have an ADU up to 50% in the non-habitable space. If I'm recalling off the top of my head, like in garages and stuff, laundry room, that sort of thing. So again, I mean, that may not be possible. And also, we'd certainly evaluate it, but the applicant determines what they want. There may be other reasons, they didn't want to pursue, a lot split. They don't want the lot split, for example. There may be other reasons why an applicant hasn't pursued that path.
Sure. I'm not saying we need to require or even suggest this or anything. It was just an idea that I thought maybe would work here. My second question is linked to page 10 of the staff memo. And it's sort of linked to Vice Chair Martinez's comment earlier about potential impacts on the surrounding parking. Basically, this is in one of the areas of the city where you could effectively have almost no parking and still have that effectively be mitigated by nearby on-street and off-street parking. But at the same time, that mitigation seems like it would be basically converting some public property to a private benefit. Like you're saying, we're going to allow for you to not have certain requirements on your property and you'll be able to use the city's property to basically meet your requirements. So am I interpreting that correctly?
That is one way to look at that. I would say that's not unique for any project, though. It would be the same with a commercial business, that you wouldn't be requiring to have a off-street parking because you're saying, well, your customers can park in a city parking lot, or frankly, just saying there's space on the public street, which is a public resource. That it could be a bike lane, or whatever. We're saying that's available for parking. It's the same idea there. So I mean, you're correct, but I would say it's not a unique phenomenon.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that, the potential loss of public use in higher use time periods, like Vice Chair Martinez noted, it is accounted for in the planning here, because I agree the vast majority of the time adding 5 or 9 more cars into that area isn't going to create a huge amount of strain on the existing parking pool, but there might be some times where it would be. So I'd want to see that accounted for the transportation demand management program if it can be. So that's more of a comment than a question, I guess. Let's see, did I have any other questions? All right, and I think all my other questions have been addressed by other commissioners already. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Menace. One of the only questions left, I think, is asking regarding the parking lots in the area. Is there a time constraint that they can be used? For instance, the public parking in either that's associated with the dance studio or with the church, or right across the street from that property, right across tenant from that property. Is there a time of day limit?
I haven't, I don't know of one. I don't think there is one, but, so like the overnight parking for what you're saying.
Right.
I don't think there are time limits on the parking lots, at least to my knowledge. I never, when I did the site visit, I didn't see any like parking from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. or no parking from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. anything of that nature in the parking lots. So,
Is it allowed to park overnight in the city parking lot?
Right.
Alex, do you know about that? I don't. No.
Well, there is a restriction with the church parking lot because the church has the services there on Sunday mornings. And I also think there's a 72-hour limit on street parking, if I'm not.
It's a 72-hour limit. I'm looking in the municipal code now and I don't see anything, but I'll let you know if I see anything in there.
Yeah,
I don't recall ever seeing any posted signs in any of the parking lots.
okay. All right. That's a concern. I mean, just because where it obviously then they're all going to be parking on the street. And so that causes a problem. So I'm not sure what to do at this stage.
Well, which one? Once they move the car, 72 hours it's when they come to park. So as long as it's not parked for more than 3 days. So if the people are using their cars, then it counts as they move their cars.
Yeah.
And they're coming park at night. So, but that'll also be something that will be brought up as part of that plan because and that was one of the reasons why we included that as part of the condition so that we could let the property owners know, look, there are still requirements that you're still going to have to meet. And these are how, and by using transit, by using these other methods, we can, try to eliminate as much as, cars there anyway. I mean, with the two 1-bedroom units, I mean, there might be a maximum of 4 cars. I mean, they're not family oriented, at least on the two units. On the 4 units, not quite sure. I mean, they do provide some off-street parking, so it wouldn't even be the maximum. It'd be it'd be 9 spaces altogether. Unless you want to add like what Tim was saying, if you want to add that one spot. But other than that, so the cars will be moving for the most part. Cars will be moving in and out throughout the 24-hour period.
And the commission could, as the conditions of approval require the travel demand management plan to be approved.
That's exactly what I
You
was
could
thinking.
incorporate, no tenants should be instructed not to park, in this parking lot Sunday mornings.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was wondering if, just looking at that right now and wondering if we could just have a list of the different things that need to be on there. But if we do it the other way around and say that the TDM needs to be approved before issuance, I think that would satisfy me. That would give us enough time to think.
It's set to be reviewed and approved by the planning manager. So that's what the condition of approval says. So I would recommend the commission tonight identifying the list of conditions that it would want in there. We could modify the condition of approval number 4 to include those items.
Okay, so instead of saying that it needs to go to, I mean, I guess for the commission, I mean, if we want to go through what the list of those requirements would be and put those right now, or if we're fine with leaving it to the planning manager, or the other thing is if we suggest that it goes to the ad hoc committee or something like that, if that's possible. Right? I mean, any of those are options as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, one thing we have to keep in mind here, because if we actually make the project adhere to any kind of parking standards, that there are going to have to be driveways put in there, which is going to remove on-street parking. So if we get too involved with the saying, oh, we got to fit all the parking spots within the project, we are going to be taking away on-street parking at the same time. So
That's not what I'm suggesting.
no, but well, actually, I'm kind of out of order
Okay.
here because that's probably part of the discussion that we have later. But I just want to point that out that, that we could be by forcing any kind of parking spaces on the project, we could be removing on-street parking.
Yeah, I mean, that's obvious. It's a good point, but I don't think anyone at this point is suggesting that there are changes in how that's set up. So it wouldn't change what it is shown here currently on attachment B. I think my only concern is that we just, because there, as was brought up by other commissioners, there is, especially during the weekends and during events, that all of that parking is taken up. You can see it with baseball games, with anything that's going on at the Playhouse. So it's just the concern of where people can park and when they can park there, and making sure that the tenants are made aware of those options, because we're effectively losing, if we take away the one parking spot on 600 tenant, we're losing 10 parking spaces, not 9.
Right, yeah.
So, okay.
Raphael has his hand up.
Commissioner Menace?
Yes, I actually had another sort of side question. While I was looking through the municipal code to see some things. I noticed there was a segment in there about bicycle parking requirements. I was wondering whether the municipal code section 17.48.120 triggered on this project because of the changes, or whether the changes weren't substantial enough either in type or in surface area or whatnot to trigger that requirement.
It's because of that. There wasn't any changes. Plus, these are residential units, so in most cases they can park their bikes inside their units. So, and that's usually what happens. They'll be parking their individual bikes in their individual units. So, in most cases, and because there was really no augmentation to there's no augmentation to the buildings that would expand the footprint that would require additional parking for bike parking as well.
Got it. Just wanted to make sure we weren't forgetting about the bikes along with all the cars here.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anything, in terms of occupancy, you're downzoning this property. If it was going the other way, like it's going from residential to commercial,
Right.
then there'd be a whole other host of things.
Yeah.
Kind of backing off on it.
Yeah.
So, and that would probably, and there's only a couple of units, so I don't think they even would really trigger a bicycle need unless they wanted it.
Vice Chair Martinez?
Mr. Hannum, I believe on 600 Park Street, right out front, we have signage that denotes 1 hour parking. You might want to revise that or take that sign down, so that if those units do go into production and there are folks that would like to live there, that they're not cited for parking in the 1 hour parking space. So we might want to just update that or remove the sign altogether. Thank you.
Okay, so other comments before we go to public hearing? And at what point would you want the list for the conditional use?
Actually, before you make the motion of the.
Okay, we'll come back to it then.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Then are there any other questions before we open the public hearing? Nope. Okay, is the applicant present? Great. Oh, is that, I'm sorry, are you, Mr. Williams or? Great. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Is there anything that you would like to speak to this to let us know what you're thinking of and how the parking would be affected there? Please right up here. Sorry, you even get your own mic.
That's right. Everyone. I haven't did this since I was in 8th grade.
Well, there you go. That wasn't too long ago, right?
Okay. Parking is not going to be a problem. You're going to enjoy this property that I'm going to develop. I think that I'm a little nervous. I know this is going to be a great project. This is my passion, developing property, buying them, fixing them up, renting them out, and seeing people smile that they have a nice, good, clean place to go to. I'm gonna do all what I can. I always put my heart into every project that I do. It's personal. I had a inspection today in one of my Richmond. The inspector came out. He looked at it. He said, "Wow, man, this place is clean. It's beautiful." And I said, "Well, this is have all my places." And I introduced myself to him. I said, "Well, I'm the senior building inspector supervisor for the city of Richmond. And I have a passion for doing these type of projects and having housing, which is something that we all need. Yeah, but this homeless situation is kind of, kind of blows me away to see all these people that is homeless. But I feel my family and my entire group, we take this personal, and we're gonna do what we can. And I teach my kids, my 2 sons, the same thing. Parking situation, I'm gonna make it work. I'll work with David, which I have been working with David for about this situation. And whatever we have to do to angle the parking stalls, I'm gonna do it. I give you my word on that. That's all I got. It's my word. But you guys are all going to be happy. You have projects, and I would like to participate, building some of the projects and working with you guys, and as a partner and developing some of these projects here in the city of Pinole.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Williams. And so just to confirm that you are in contract to purchase the 612 tenant
Yes, ma'am.
property, right? The one that will put 4 parking places there instead of 6.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, it would be fabulous to have that developed and changed. That's an old historic property, and to see that actually come back to life would be great. So we hope that that all goes through. So do we have any questions for Mr. Williams? No, and it seems like at least with your property right there, there's with the 4 parking spaces, there's not as much of an impact on the parking as as the other property right there. So yes, Commissioner Menes.
I guess sort of a question to Mr. Williams, like, in your experience developing properties like this in the past, how much of a parking need have the tenants typically had? Like, recent history, because I know a decade ago or 2 decades ago, they might have had more cars than they do now.
Okay. I own a piece of property at 563 South 31st Street in Richmond. It's 3 live workspaces. And the men of the house, they have vehicles because they have to go out and work. And I noticed, because I was sitting there today, the women, they carpool. It's amazing how they work together. They come by and pick them up, bring them back. And next to that property, I own a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and an ADU, and they all do the same thing. It's really no impact on the parking because I have 3 parking spaces in the front, and it's on South 31st Street. They're able to park their vehicles there, and I haven't had any problems. And I go by there just about every day just to make sure everything's okay. Just like I ride by tenants almost every day, but works out. It really does.
Great, thanks for clearing that up.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Williams. And to clarify, you're the building inspector supervisor for the city of Richmond?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you're cognizant of some of the issues and things like that. So,
Yes, I'm gonna
Great.
do a nice job. And like I was telling my wife, she can vouch for me. I'm gonna invite all you guys to the project after I finish. You guys gonna be happy.
great. Well, we look forward to that. And as there are no other questions, do we have, thank you very much. Do we have any public comment?
I don't see anyone online, Chair.
Okay. All right, then that sounds good. Then at this point, then we'll close the public hearing. And let's see if we can figure this out and work out those details and get this taken care of. Let's start our discussion starting from Commissioner Menes. Any last comments here?
Yeah, there were a few items I had that fell more under comments than questions. First off, hopping back to page number 5, I wanted to particularly highlight transit-oriented development. I think this is one of those areas where this project really fits within the whole transit-oriented development core. It's right within the downtown core. As the staff report notes, it's near to mass transit access options. It's within one of the more walkable parts of the city. So I think it's important to emphasize that, and also the fact that it really conforms well with land use policy 10. Even though there's probably gonna be pretty substantial changes to the interior, it sounds like most of the exterior shell of the buildings, including even parts of the facade, is going to be maintained. So that's going to be a good part of the way towards maintaining the historical character of the neighborhood, while also allowing for higher density housing and inclusionary housing, which ties back into goal HE2. So I think that in terms of general plan consistency, this project does a great job of fitting in with the general plan and with the specific plans. My only concern is, with the transportation management plan, making sure that, there's ways to mitigate the potential impact on higher use times of use, like during weekends, during sports events, that sort of thing. And let's see, I think there might have been one other comment. No, I think that's all my comments for us.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Commissioner Menes. Commissioner Banuelos.
Well, in terms of what we're really supposed to be talking about in terms of the parking, when I first looked at this, I already mentioned I would get rid of that parking space on 600 because of the parking that's around the immediate area. But I am kind of sensitive to what, because since you live there, pretty much you're more aware of the parking patterns that go on a regular basis. And I did go by there this afternoon, and it was rush hour, but there was nobody in the parking lot, but it wasn't Saturday. So I think on a Saturday, it's a whole other story. So I'm a little torn because I would take one other parking space off out of this, just to kind of clear up the things like I was mentioning. And this I might have to ask you, that I thought our applicant said something about, diagonal parking. I just wonder if there's room on 612, depending on the angle, to do a single back out. You know,
Yeah,
is
the
it wide
angles-
enough in the angle on the hypotenuse end to make that work? Because if that was possible, you know, it looks like he could almost get 6 spaces out of it. If the distance, here's the angle, here's the straight part. If the distance here to here is within, you know, the guidelines, then they could be, even if the angle was not like a 30 or 45, but kind of in between, you might be able to get it to work if the straight distance was enough.
If they're all driving minis, yeah. If any type of car, because that's what we looked at.
Did you guys do that already?
Yeah, we looked at, just to kind of give the commission, we looked at when we were doing this originally, and that's why we brought in both properties, is, you know, is looking to see if we could like tear down the fence and create parking for both spaces. The problem is that you got that electric pole right there. There was some issues utility wise that it couldn't work. We also looked at with both properties of blowing through the garages and, you know, going and maybe additionally adding some spots along the side. That didn't work either, because then we were totally taking away parking, because we were going to use those areas as drive-throughs to get to
you lose spaces.
yeah, so we're moving even more spaces doing that. And so we decided, because in 17.48060.1, there talks about shared parking. And so we were trying to work around that. It was still going to require a conditional use permit. But once we started going through all of these and started measuring just decent car sizes, just, you know, like Accords and Nissan Maximas, those types of cars, without counting trucks or Jeeps or SUVs, so we were just talking cars, it got really tight in there really fast. And so
did you try them as all compact spaces?
Even with compact spaces, like I said, unless they were all minis, I mean, mini minis.
Motorcycle spaces.
Yeah, pretty much motorcycle spaces. Because you don't have the back, you can get in, you can't get out. That's the problem.
That's what I was saying, if the angle was not as.
Yeah, we would need to get a decent angle, we would have to tear out, for 600 tenant, we'd have to tear out the fence. Because there's from the building to the fence is only about 16 feet.
Okay.
So that was the issue. That was the and that's why we thought about taking out the fence. It gives an additional 4 feet, encroaching in on the 2279 and 600 tenant. But then that didn't work, because once you started getting in onto the property and at 22 behind to 2279, you start getting in just a whole bunch of stuff was going to have to start happening to make that happen. And so when we looked at then B1, where we could reduce parking spaces, we decided that based on what we couldn't get done, that we would try to just reduce the spaces on for the off-street parking. So we couldn't get additional cars on there.
And then, other than just sort of may not be every Saturday, but it's going to be some Saturdays where there's going to be some kind of conflict out there. I would tend to like I said, tend to lean towards doing this, but taking away another space.
Yeah. The only thing on the events on the weekends, I mean, the baseball games, is Fernandez lighted?
Yeah.
Okay, so they go till 9:30 at night with Little League and all that. Okay, I just yeah. So I mean, in most cases, Little League from January to June, they're usually in there. They'll probably be out. I don't know the schedule of the Playhouse and how many events they have a year, but the youth center. So I mean, there'll be times where, there might be some times where there can be tight in there, but not for long. Not if you look at the whole year, the whole 24 hours, it really doesn't. I mean, you're going to have some serious, and when churches, I don't know how many services they have a day. If it's just one, if it's just one, then for the most part, for that 2 hour period, then they'll be gone. So the ebbs and flows, I think, and the residents, once we figure out what we want to do with the plan, we can work with the residents and stuff. I mean, when we were going through this, we really thought everything would be, most of the parking would be south of Park. So not so much in the church park, but south of Park, because that's where all the doors are, and that's where all the, and there's more than enough spaces. We felt that to accommodate that. We didn't really think that the church parking lot would be used per se, just because of the walking distance. More people would want to park right in front of their unit. So
There would have to be already cars there in order to park.
right,
in the parking
right,
lot,
yeah, exactly,
which could happen.
yeah, which could happen. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. The other thing I was thinking of, and Alex, you're making me think of this, is make sure whatever we do, we don't put in conflict that existing overlay that's on the church where the church uses that parking lot at times. We don't want to violate that in the process of approving it.
Right.
So we probably would have to have some kind of language in whatever motion we make that says that whatever we're doing, as long as we're still I don't know, say respecting or maintaining the current thing that's there now relative to the church's
The
parking.
current access agreements.
Yeah, okay, we can't violate the access agreements. So I'm almost there, but not quite. I'm kind of waiting to see what everybody else says at the moment.
Thank you, Commissioner Banuelos. Commissioner Current.
Thank you. I just think it's premature. I'm very troubled by the parking situation. I think that needs to be finalized before we can come up with an answer about how many parking spots are required. I may actually even entertain lower requirement because as I indicated earlier in this meeting, when we start trying to force the project to accommodate parking, we will be requiring driveways, which is going to take away on-street parking. I think an argument could be made that maybe even zero parking and just have all the tenants park on the street, and to get around the hour requirements, we could just, give a permit or something like that so that they can exceed 72 hours. But, I think we have to understand that when we start forcing requirements for parking, we are reducing on-street parking. And I'm not prepared to vote on this matter until we can actually come up with a very definitive parking strategy as far as where the parking spots are going to be. Because I'm looking at this, this parking situation for 612 tenant, and tandem parking, I just think is going to be just such a horrible thing. I just don't see it working. And I think we need to really resolve about how do we balance, having parking off street versus not taking away on-street parking. And I think we need a better answer to what I'm seeing here. And until that, we come up with a definitive solution, I'm not going to support the resolution as it is now. It doesn't mean that I don't support the project. I think it's a great project. I just think we need to find some solution to the parking situation.
Or decide that we're going to go with less.
What's that?
Or decide we're going with less, is like what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Haven't we looked at this before? This seems like, I feel like we've done this one already.
I don't think so.
Really?
Let me call
Now,
that.
are you talking about there being less of a requirement?
Yeah,
Yeah,
reducing the amount.
So basically reducing the amount that they are required to.
I think trying to force 4 parking spots into the 612. I mean, the other one I'm happy with, there's no issue there, but I think if we start, with 612 tenant, if we, I think we're running into problems when we try to shoehorn 4 parking spots into something that I don't think is very viable.
Okay, so what I understand you proposing is that that right now, as is in the staff report, that we are losing 10 or we are adding basically 10 parking to 10 cars, potentially 10 cars based on what the requirements are to the public to the public access, to public streets or to public lots right there. So what
Yeah.
I hear you as to require less of a reduction.
Yeah, Madam Chair, basically, what the commission can, because you're reducing on-street parking right here, you could waive the requirement of not having any on-street parking with this resolution for these two
On street or off
parcels.
street?
Off-street,
Okay,
off-street. So for example, we require the 1.5 and Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but they can waive the reduction all the way down to 0 off-street parking with this resolution. So if that's something that you want to do, then they wouldn't be required
But any part.
to put any parking on there. They could, I mean, if they want to park in the driveway, they can. They just wouldn't have the requirement. They just wouldn't have the requirement of that. They wouldn't have to do that. So you can do that with this resolution if you wanted to do that.
yeah, I don't know if we're actually that far along the line to actually make something that bold happen. Because we are talking about, having no parking requirement, which I think is something we'd really want to discuss quite seriously about whether we want to do that. Of course, if we free up those parking spots, we could always put Blackies back in there and have all the good food that they used to have, but it wasn't really that good. That's why they went out of business, but I just think that, as I said before, I think we're kind of making I forget the term about it. I can't think of the fancy name for it, but it's some
Existing
kind of Hobson
non-conforming use.
choice or something. I think it's a Hobson choice where we're trying to satisfy the zoning requirement to have parking there, but what we're doing is making the on-street parking worse by making that requirement. And so it might be better just to bite the bullet and say, hey, why not have the parking off-street anyways? Because we're going to be taking, if we require them somehow configured as to where you can have four or six parking spots on that unit, there's going to have to be access driveways, which is going to take away off, on-street parking. So
Could I just ask for a correction? You meant a reduction there would be,
Off-street.
right.
well, yeah, I'm thinking about off-street, off-street a project that's on, that's part of the project. I think if we, try to have them adhere to the code, we're going to be undoing what the real issue is, and that's reducing, the amount of on-street parking that's available for the general public. So I think that if we just,
Question, is there a parking driveway, is there a driveway cut out in front of?
Yeah, I was trying to look
612
at-
right now?
I was trying to look at Google.
There
Earth,
is.
yeah.
So there already is.
Yeah, there's an
driveway
existing.
Cut out. So we're not affecting that at all.
No.
So I think you're thinking too hard, Dave.
Yeah, I don't think it changes
Because-
the driveway.
It's
on
my,
Because it
it's my
doesn't-
last time to think,
Okay, I know we're nervous about this, right? But I mean, if you look at that, then the driveway cutout's already there. It's not.
Yeah, if the
affecting
driveway's
anymore
cut
on
up
street.
already there, I was just trying to get on Google Earth to check that out.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just a very thin driveway. It's a very narrow driveway. I mean, so that's why when we tried to put the 6 cars on there, there was no way that was going to work. But with the 4 cars, meaning the 2 in the garage and then 2 tandem, whether they're tandem behind them or tandem behind themselves, however they worked it, we were going to put 4 on offsite.
And it looks like you can get four offsite
Yeah.
and they can safely move around each other.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the
Okay.
intent. Yeah, to get those other 2 that was an old site plan. That was the original. And so that wasn't going to work, but we
Okay.
knew we could get 4, 2 in the garage and 2 somewhere else on the.
Yeah,
with space enough to get everybody in and out.
I just don't see how those people are gonna be getting out. It's just like parallel parking that they're doing on, so kind of like when we talk about tandem parking, by allowing that space that they can actually do parallel parking and to get to that tandem situation or.
Yeah, they could either park behind like if you have the 2 in the garage, they can either park 2 like tandem with the 2 cars in the garage, or where they can move where that, I guess I'll call it the 4th car, can move either tandem behind the other outside car, where inside car can move out. There'll be a lot of movement of cars, and there is enough, because of the length, there is enough room for the 2 cars to have space where they can back up and move around. So that was the issue, that with 6 cars on there, meaning
4 cars in the driveway, 2 in the garage, you couldn't do it.
So you're not going to require tenant one to go knock on the door of tenant two to say, hey, can you move your car?
Yeah, that's.
What you're kind of envisioning there is sort of like a mini street there where,
Yeah.
where you're requiring
Like
people to,
street parking.
yeah, where
Yeah.
you're trying where it's not really your back to back to back. You're kind of
Right.
like a, like you have street parking
Yeah.
essentially where you're doing parallel.
Because
parking.
the driveway is long enough, it has enough length
Okay,
to be able to do that.
All
It
right.
doesn't have enough length to do the 3 cars and then but it did have for 2.
yeah, then that car that's close to where the entrance is that Tim was really concerned about.
Yeah.
Maybe we should just remove that as a requirement, just have 3 cars there and 2 in the garage.
Okay, so what you're proposing is, I hear 2 potential proposals here. One is for 600 tenant to reduce, again, the required parking by 1. So that the one that is parked right in front of the unit is not a required parking space
On the side, yes.
That's
on the side. That's 1.
That's the covered carport you're talking about, 600?
Is that a covered carport? I think it's uncovered.
It's uncut.
The new covered carport at the back.
I mean, you're looking at 600.
I'm looking at 600,
Not 612.
correct,
At 600, there's that car that looks like a Porsche there.
Yeah.
right, and I think that's uncovered.
Yeah, so
Okay.
is that next to the street where it would actually be taking, that we'd be removing an on-street parking spot? Or is that sort of one where they have to back up, or I don't know how that would work, how that parking?
Well, they could, that would just be a driveway for 1 car to park. So whether they back it in or put it in the other way, that'd be one place for them to park
So their access would be to back up to,
on the tenant.
on the tenant, so that would be like about 100-foot backup of the car.
Not on-
No,
not 600
tenant is
tenant.
right here. Right here. This is tenant.
Oh, that's tenant.
Yeah, that's tenant.
Oh, okay, that would make sense. And there's a driveway there already, right?
Right, so what Tim was proposing was to remove that requirement
Why?
because of the car being parked
Right now.
right.
The door.
Blocks the door.
Oh,
You have to have open space.
Oh,
in front of the door,
okay.
Like a landing. It's flat.
I see. Yeah.
So there's that one,
Mhm.
there's that one. So we're at 10.
Or 10.
We're at 10. And then for 612, I think at this point, without actually looking at the site, we can't make that determination. So what is it, 4 or 3 cars that we require that they park there?
Yeah.
Well, there'd be 4 cars on site.
Right.
So whether it's 2 in the garage, 2 tandem,
Right. And-
it's 4 cars.
And so Dave's concern is that 4 is too many.
I think so. And actually, I think it's going to be an awkward situation, but, I don't know if we can resolve this tonight or not because
I think we need to, because I think we just, I don't think it's that huge of an issue right now, especially since we're changing the commission and they would have to start over at the beginning. So I think your question is valid and the things you've been asking are valid. So the question that we have to ask is if we are okay with saying that they're going to be even a little bit more out of
Yeah.
what's required.
Yeah.
And if we are, okay, so be it.
Okay.
That's okay.
okay,
And so if we say we only require you to park 3 cars there and they can park 4 cars there and they do, hallelujah. Okay,
I'm for
so we're good.
I'm for that.
So that would mean that they would be 11 cars out for this application,
Yeah.
correct? Okay,
And,
So-
yeah, I'm fine with that. And
Okay.
and I'm fine with that.
okay. So let's, before we go through and, do it, let's make sure that we've got all of these here and that we have agreement.
What I hear being proposed is that for 600 tenant, you would waive all 4 required parking spaces. So they'd have to.
No,
We-
for
we-
600, we would waive 1 more.
But they already are being, the proposal is for them to,
Basically, we would remove one uncovered space. So they would have the 2, so 612 tenant right now is proposed to have 2 two uncovered. two
No,
covered.
600.
No, 612 is
612.
required for on-site parking.
Yes.
Okay, two covered, two uncovered. They would remove one uncovered to give them
Well,
at 612 would just take the one off.
Right, so we'd be waiving all 4 required parking spaces.
No, there would be, well, for 600 tenant, yes, you're correct. We'd be removing all 4.
No, this should be the garage ones, wouldn't they? The ones in the garage?
No, that's for 2279 Park Street.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got
Okay,
it.
and actually, I kind of wonder if we're premature in removing, because the issue that Tim had with the that parking spot was that it was blocking the egress door. If it can be configured somehow where we actually park further back and leave, the door accessible, or even moving the door to a different position, you could still have a parking spot there. So I think that Tim, am I right that the main objection you have with that is the egress?
Yeah, the clearance to get out of that door. And that driveway there is too narrow to move it back and forth. It's only 8.6.
So if they were able to redesign that unit to where the egress door was actually in a different location.
Well, more than that, they'd have to take 2 feet out of that side of that unit, which I wouldn't really want them to do. That kind of kills the unit. The driveway's too narrow. The spot that car is in is too narrow.
If you say it, move the entry door,
Move the entrance.
plan left or plan right,
Mhm.
the car goes plan left or right
Into
correspondingly.
the
It's
bedroom.
not just sitting right where the car's at theoretically.
Well, you could have the,
Yeah, but it really depends on where the car ends up, because you can move that and still have the car could still be blocking it.
Yeah, but you put a car stop or something.
not if you put the door on tenant, instead of, put it on the tenant wall rather than on the driveway wall. You could reconfigure that unit just a little bit by just
Okay,
yeah.
we tonight are talking about the parking. So, I
Okay.
mean, it's
And
true,
that's what he's
it's
doing.
true, it's all related. How can we move things and how can we do things? So the question is you're right. Thank you, City Attorney Mogg, that we would be waiving all of the requirements for 600. Commissioner Menace.
Thank you. So I guess I had a question in part for Commissioner Manuelos. Basically, would there be any way that the driveway could be restructured, like mandating that the car be parked at a certain portion of the driveway that would allow for sufficient egress space for the door? Because it looks like the door's opening inwards and not outwards. But I don't know how that impacts the building code requirements and so on.
Well, what they're saying is, if they say you just fiddle with the plan and you move the door further back. And if you allow, there's no setback requirement on this, right?
No.
Okay, so they can park right at the edge of the sidewalk if they wanted to. They park, it's pushed towards the front. It's 28. What's that say? 28. I'm way too old to be.
26.9.
I almost make it out. 26.9.
Yeah. That's
So a parking space is what, 19 by 9, and it's actually 19 by 8.6 in this one.
Yeah.
So that would leave you around 9 or 10 feet at the back end. So the only problem is they'd have to redesign that unit. But they could, what you guys are talking about in terms of moving the doorway back far enough though it clears the parking space, that would work. But it required them somehow flipping that unit right there. They could put the doorway on the street side.
Mhm.
As long as there was enough room so you didn't get in a situation where the door is opening over the sidewalk. Can't do that. If it's opened in, then that wouldn't be a problem. So that would be the other semi-easy way to do it. Put the door on the street side, like in a corner or something like that, close up the other door, and then they can rearrange the furniture on the inside to go back up against that other wall. Because that wall there is long enough that they can almost mirror image the furniture they have in their plan. So that would be a possibility.
Yeah, and with that, I think that I'd like to keep that parking, since there's already a driveway spot there. I would rather put the onus on the developer to look at reconfiguring that unit to where there is not a conflict between the parked car and the door.
I think that building and planning can address that if there's a conflict with the building code, right?
So if you wanna maintain the parking spot, then I would simply maintain it as is. And if it doesn't work with the building code, then they will have to redesign the project
Right.
before they
Okay.
can get,
Or come back to us.
or come
Okay.
back
Or come back to
to
you.
get
I-
that
I-
reduced.
Yeah,
I don't think they do have to do a whole lot.
I don't
Just move
either.
The door.
So I'm inclined to keep the parking requirement for 600 and reduce 612
By one.
by one.
Okay,
We're
there you
back to-
go.
Okay,
We're
And
back
we
to
work
so-
this out.
I'd go for that.
Moving on to 612, but I just wanted to say that I agree with Commissioner Current, just based on the layout of that property and whether or not people actually use the garage for its intended purpose of parking cars or not. It looks like if you just remove one car there, you've basically got 3 cars parallel parked. There'd be enough space for them to maneuver. You wouldn't need to ask people to get out of the way. Whereas if you have 4 cars there, there's, always the possibility of conflict. You need to knock on people's doors and just hassle. So I think just having 3 parking spaces mandated there would be more reasonable, even if it would be less than 1 parking space required per unit. Because of the, as already noted elsewhere in the staff report and other supporting documentation, existing on-street and off-street parking availability, I think 1 car could be mitigated for that.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner, anything else, Commissioner Current?
No, I think we've actually resolved the situation, but I'll.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner
Fair, I have to
Benzul.
say it.
Yeah, I'm good with I didn't want to go all the way to reducing everything. I thought that was a little too far, but I'm good with where we're kind of settled. The only thing I thought was adding some more qualifications. And the only thing I kind of went to is 2 things. One is creating that list so that on Saturdays when there is a lot of things going on, the farmers market, so we've got that list in there. Maybe it's specific events or specific days. And then possibly for this is for that driveway, limit the types of vehicles to just passengers, so there aren't campers and RVs and big giant work trucks and other things that, I don't know if we can.
I don't think we can do that.
Okay.
The city's code already prohibits
Some of that.
some of that as well.
On private,
Yeah.
Okay.
because that 4 could go to 0 with some parts of RV there.
Okay, excellent.
Other than that, no, I'm good with where we're at.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Commissioner Benzuli and Vice Chair Martinez.
Thank you, Chair Moriarty. I just want to cover one point that Commissioner Pinellos brought up earlier, which were on the tenant side of 600, the doorways and the fact that they enter on the street. Will we need to red stripe in front of those areas? Will that be a requirement that we need to consider?
Not on the
from a
street gutter.
Safety and ingress egress with the public
You
safety.
mean at the right in front of the door at the street? You mean like
Right,
it
the old
goes right here?
Blackies, remember there's the door to
Um,
go in.
Not really for that, are there any rules about how far away from the corner you can park? Usually you don't want to get too close to the corner, right?
Well, there's not, I mean, in some cases you have, a couple 100 feet, but depending on, that's for accesses, but for parking, no, you can park right in front, right on the corner in a residential
So
area.
you don't
Yeah,
have a
that's not a
distance
problem.
off of that, yeah.
Yeah, that's not a
Okay,
problem.
I
Yeah.
just wanted to
No,
make
that's,
sure
no, that's
that we.
okay.
we're
People,
okay with that.
people go out of their doors and there's a park cart right there all the time.
Okay, good. Thank you. Appreciate the clarification. That's all I had, Chair.
Okay, great. Then, if it's okay with us all, let's just go ahead and think about what that, with the TDM, the list that we would want to make right there. And if you have some suggestions, planning manager Hannum, that would be great. I've got a list here, but maybe you already have them in your head. And let's make sure we have those written down.
Yeah, basically what I have is that as part of like when the tenants move in, they're given this plan or packet of transit passes that they're given, all the areas where they can and can't park, or no parking, those types of things. Similar to what I had, some of the things on the list that you had, regarding certain events, certain times, regarding I wasn't sure about the church. I mean, that was the only, and if they're only having one service, we would ask them to try not to park in that area on Sundays or in that area. And then the rest of it, because the people at Fernandez, they usually park in those parking lots. They're all parking in those parking lots. So that's kind of I think really the only place we probably would need to protect would be the church on Sundays. Because everything else would be open. You could park along the street along Fernandez, along Tenet in front of Fernandez Park.
On tenant.
You can park, on Buena Vista, actually, on those areas. So I think it'd probably be the church parking would be the main issue. And that they have transit, that they have the ability to get to transit.
But do we have to, you remember Frankie said that, the one side's only 1 hour parking. Do we have to mix that?
Yeah, we would have to that would be removed. We can remove
Is that would that be part of this, or does that have to be its own separate thing?
Seems
That I'm not sure. I think we can do it now, but
Because that wouldn't be an applicant thing, that would be a city thing.
Yeah, I'll find the language. The city engineer has that authority under the municipal code. So we can pass that along to the city engineer to reevaluate whether that's still needed.
Because that was for picking up food at Blackie's. That's why it was 1 hour.
1 hour. And so do we have to add that? We don't have to add that day anywhere. Okay, it just needs to be in your list.
Right.
Okay. What about the list of the parking lots and if there are any time constraints at all? Or if what their hours are?
Right.
We had kicked around the idea of no storage in the covered garage for 2279 Park. I don't know how we can regulate that, but
The list of things they're supposed to
Okay.
instruct
Right.
their
let's
tenants.
add that to the list as well. We can do that as well for the 612 tenant.
Right.
That there be no storage or no storage closets built. I don't know about if there's room for storage closets in there.
Actually,
Pardon?
the garage is oh, there is.
So there is room for storage closets. Okay. And so, but if there's room for storage closets as well as 2 cars, then that would be all right. So we don't have to say no.
I also think that if we're going down to a 3-car requirement for the 612 property, that we don't need to be as strict about storage because there's enough raw space of a driveway for 3 cars to fit, where 4 maybe not.
Okay, good enough, good enough. So the only place that we're talking about no storage in the covered garage is for 2279 Park. Okay,
And don't forget that if this becomes a problem with the tenants, the landlord could very easily change the requirements too.
and they do. Yes, okay. All right, for us, we were talking about maintaining the current access agreements for the parking lots. Okay, and vouchers, car share, no storage, public transit information, the parking lots, time constraints, which will be provided to the landlords so that they can get that. Okay, so that's all I see then, is that we're just changing one, we're changing,
We still have 10, but the 10's the opposite, where we were gonna really move the one on
Right.
600, now we're moving it from 612, so it's
Right.
still 10 spots.
got it. Okay, so we'll keep that at 600 and that will be worked. Okay, so, anything else, Commissioner Menace?
Yes, so I wanted to reference back to one of our prior projects. If I'm recalling correctly, the BCRE sort of mixed commercial residential development had, as part of what it was doing, it had an explicit transportation demand management agreement with a nearby church on the use of their parking lot. So I was wondering whether something more concrete could be negotiated, maybe, or whether that wasn't even necessary for a project of this size.
For a project this size, it really wasn't necessary. It's so small. I mean, if we were doing like 10, 15, 20, 25 units, then yeah, anything over usually 10 or 12, we start looking at if we need to reach out to other places for release of stuff. But there's only 5 units or 6 units total on this property. I count the 2279 as an existing unit. It has been used as a home before, so all the impacts have been measured, but the additional 3 units on 612 and an additional 2 on the additional 5 units. It's a 5-unit project. It's kind of and they're 1 unit. So I mean, it's just like, they're small units. They're not, the 5 units aren't, 1,200 square foot units where full families will be in there. Maybe on 612 tenant, but definitely it'd be a lot more difficult for their tenant to be able to do that. So, so we wouldn't require that. We wouldn't go after those types of easements or asking for additional easements or access easements to other properties.
Okay, so the TDL with regards to parking in nearby areas and access agreements is going to be a more informal sort of document then. Got it. Just wanted to get that cleared up.
Yeah.
Okay, are we ready? I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Commissioner.
actually, the only other last thing was there's for certain events, we wanted to push limitations on farmers market when there's, events at the Pinole Community Playhouse, baseball games. I don't know if any of this stuff actually filters that far down, like the flea market, I'm not sure, or the farmers market, I'm not sure if that actually filters that far down. north
I
at
don't
all.
think so.
Farmers
No.
markets.
And
Okay.
again, without our having, stickers and stuff like that, I have no idea how.
How to
we would-
enforce it.
Yeah, how to
Yeah.
enforce it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good point. Then I'm good. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so are we ready to entertain the question?
I have the honors.
Would you please, and we have on the last page 12 here, a nicely written,
Yes,
however you would like to do it.
I would like to recommend approval of conditional use permit CUP 23-02 parking reduction at 612 Tenant Avenue and 600 Tenant Avenue /2279 Park Street. As proposed by staff, with the exception that on the line of attachment A, where it says, whereas 612 Tenant Avenue requesting to waive 6 off-street parking spaces, that we change that to 7 parking spaces.
And I would like to second that,
Great. Our last.
our last. Awesome. Okay,
Okay,
All right, there we go. Roll call. Commissioner Menace,
Aye.
Commissioner Benzuli,
Aye.
Commissioner Current,
aye.
Commissioner Benuelos.
Aye.
Vice Chair Martinez.
Aye.
Chair Moriarty.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
all right,
Great.
there we go.
So start getting the hammer out.
Great, thanks, guys.
Chair Moriarty, would you please also read the appeal language as well?
Thank you. I read it at the beginning. Do I need to read it again?
You probably should. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, hang on. I'll find it. Any person may appeal an action of the planning commission by filing an appeal with the city clerk in writing within 10 days of such action. Following the public hearing, the city council may act to confirm, modify, or reverse the action of the planning commission, and the planning commission may act to confirm, modify, or reverse the action of the planning manager. The cost to appeal a decision is $500 with a minimum $2,500 deposit fee. Great, thanks.
I also just want to note that there's someone with a hand raised in the public as well. So just for your information.
Okay, then we can. Is that citizens to be heard, but we're done, actually. We've closed the public hearing for this one.
Yeah.
To you whether to take.
I think
comment.
if it pertains to this item, we've already proved that it's
Yeah,
too late.
so and we don't know if it's to another, it's just a
Right,
hand raised, yeah.
Right, yeah.
So we'll say no to that one at this point. So, thank you. That means then, we do move to, old business. There's none. And new business, we have, selection of chair, vice chair, and the ad hoc planning commission, the subcommittee for 2023-24. I do have a question regarding this. Should it be the new planning commission when they are seated that chooses the chair, vice chair, and the ad hoc planning commission?
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's a possibility, and you can select the chair tonight if you wanted, or if not, Vice Chair Martinez would serve as chair at the next meeting, and then the new commission can decide who the.
Yeah.
elect.
Okay, all right. It does seem to me that it would, we do have one person who has said that he is willing to chair. I don't know what our thought is if we should wait and for that person to, for us to discuss.
I think it should be up to the other four commissioners who are going to be carrying over to decide that because you and I,
Yeah.
we're going off to the sunset. So,
Are there, I mean, we can go either way on this. And so, I mean, I'm basically, that's why I brought up the question. But if there are any other
Technically,
comments.
we'd have a continuing quorum here even without, and Dave voting, but frankly, I'd rather have the newly constituted commission vote on it because, it's going to be the chair of, effectively speaking, that commission going forward. So if Vice Chair Martinez is willing to act as chair for one meeting, then I think it would work better that way.
sure.
Great, okay.
And then we do the
So-
big massive campaign, right?
Right. Okay.
Well, we just need to make sure that all the new commissioners are sworn in by that time. That's the other issue. None of them have been sworn in, at least at this point. So that's why we put it on this agenda going into the new year. However, I know I'll be meeting with Heather because I know they're supposed to be coming in, I think, this week and next week to be sworn in and all that. So,
Well, they'll be before.
Could we just select new commissioner John Bender as the chair?
Nope. Because he's not a commissioner and he's like, no way.
How many new commissioners
So what,
actually coming in?
what there are two things I would like to do then, before we move on to our reports and communications. And because it is in the new business, and that is to welcome the new planning commissioners who will be joining us. Again, Frankie Martinez will have a new tenure. And so thank you again for accepting that. Christy Lamb Julian will be joining us. And John Bender, thank you, John Bender, for prior service and for joining the Planning Commission again. And to Gabriel Sandoval, I believe he was okayed by the council. Okay. So welcome to all of them. And then also, I'm not sure if now is a good time to say that I would like to, when we get to the adjournment, is to do that in honor of Commissioner Current. But in terms of, so why don't we wait there until we get there, since we're not going to be doing our voting and such there. So then is there any public comment?
There is a hand raised if you wanted to take the question now.
If it is to the selection of the chair, vice chair, or, I mean, we can take them at any time, right?
I think you could probably take it after if you're not taking action on this item.
Okay, great, thank you. Then let's go to the city planners reports.
thank you very much. Have a couple of things. You've heard most of the things we're still working on. We're working on the parklet program that got at least the basis got approved by the council. So we'll be starting that process. Also our objective development design standards, odds, we'll be bringing to you this month, or the early part of May, a calendar of events for that, where we see that. Pinole Shores 2 is coming May 8th. So that'll be at our next meeting. Let's see, what else do we have? We've been getting a lot more ADUs, a lot more stuff coming in. We have another potential couple of conditional use permit projects coming in as well. So we're working with those applicants to see if it's necessary. A couple of them are for alcohol use. So we're working with them on that. So.
Any commissioner reports?
Well, if nobody has it, I'd kind of like to make a little comments.
Is that under Commissioner report?
Wait, I have one more thing to say before you go to the commissioner reports. I'd like to say thank you to Chair Moriarty and Chair Current for being here these last 3 years with me. Even though we went through a lot of stuff with COVID and all the meetings, I appreciate all the insight you guys brought and all of the the long hours that you guys put in on these projects and all of your deliberations and all that. From a staff perspective, I really appreciate it. It helps us out too as well. So, but again, thank you very much for your service, and it was great working with you guys.
Absolutely. Thank
Absolutely.
you. And then I will turn it to Dave Current, who has been a volunteer public servant for more than 30 years. And has been a planning commissioner for 16 years. And so.
Well, thank you, Chair Moriarty. Yeah, as you mentioned, it was 33 years ago that I applied for the grand jury of the county and spent a long year. That being on the grand jury, it's like 20 hours a week. It's not like something you do, but I'd learned so much about how the government runs and made a lot of relationships so that after a couple of years of tutoring in the schools, I was appointed to LAFCO, which is a very prestigious commission, for 9 years, but as an alternate as a full public member. I also, like I said, did tutoring with the high school and the middle school and read aloud program. I was on the Transportation Authority Citizens Advisory Commission for 18 years. I was reviewing books for the state for 15 years, and of course, being on the planning commission for 16 years, as well as some ad hoc committees, like my name is on the plaque for the city hall here, because I was on the committee to oversee the construction of this building we're in right now. And just to give you an idea of what it was like when I got on the planning commission, the first couple of weeks I was on the commission, or even before, we had the dedication of the opening of the Kaiser Medical Center. We had the groundbreaking for Trader Joe's, and Sprouts was just a vacant lot where pumpkins and Christmas trees were sold. So there's been a lot of changes in the last 16 years, and I just want to thank the staff, the city council, and the public of Pinole for giving me the opportunity to serve. And I know the city's in good hands. I really love the fact that the younger generations are really getting involved. And I really look forward to the future of Pinole. Thank you for allowing me to serve.
Great. And are there any other comments?
Well, I remember I was on the planning commission when Dave started. I didn't know he'd already done like, a million years of all these other things, but, he jumped in, and I remember very well, because we went through a lot of those earlier things together. And he always was very thoughtful and always had the interests of the city at heart. And, sometimes I agree with him, sometimes I wouldn't, but he always was able to have a really good, always reason why he was thinking it should be this way. So it wasn't anything glib or just off the cuff. It was always very well thought out. So, and then you stuck with it. You stayed on it while I was on the city council the whole time. And it was really nice to know that you were here. And so I just want to say, just because I remember,
Yes.
thank you, personally, that you've done it. This is not an easy thing to do, taking time out of your life to come to these things. And so to do that so long like that, it's really quite an achievement.
Thank you. I enjoyed working with you too when we started, when you were already on it. And I thank your service for being on the city council. And I really appreciated the fact that you came back to the planning commission, because we were kind of going through a big transition, having lost a planning director, and a lot of the commissioners were not returning, two of which because they were going to the city council. But we really helped stabilize this commission when we really needed it.
And it was fairly stable as it was. I think you have totally to do with that. So.
I'd like to say a few words of thanks to Commissioner Curran and also to Chair Moriarty, both of them for, acting as mentors to me on the planning commission, teaching me both by example and through more practical instruction on, how all this works, what things I actually need to focus on, what things I maybe can afford to focus on a little bit less. And also by, their example as commissioners and as chair, what they chose to focus on, what topics they prioritized, what topics they didn't prioritize, what interests they prioritized, what areas they were looking at, how they looked at particular projects. And Commissioner Curran in particular, I want to thank for, his work with me before I joined the commission, because he repeatedly encouraged me to join the planning commission, even when it took me a few tries to get onto the planning commission. Commissioner Curran said, keep at it. It'll be worthwhile. You'll be able to contribute here. And, I listened, and I'm glad that I listened because, I hope that someday I'll be able to, live up to example. I've been trying to a bit, but it'll take me a while before I can manage to catch up. He's done a lot to benefit the city over, just the 16 years on the planning commission alone, let alone all the various other public service that he's done, as noted on committees on, helping to put together this whole building that we're in, his work with the grand jury, his work, just being a public servant and a citizen overall. He's done a great deal and he's by far earned the right to, rest. So I just wanted to say thank you, Commissioner Curran, for, all the work that you've done for the city. And I hope that as a member of the younger generation that we can live up to the expectations that you have for us.
Well, thank you, Raphael, and I'm sure that you will live up to the expectations that I have for you. which is great, so thank you for the kind comments.
I didn't mean to leave you out.
Well, that's all.
And
No worries.
I did want to say, we're gonna miss your knowledge of plants and trees. That's always, to me, that's always a really hard thing to know, and because I don't. That's not my thing, So now we'll just have more buildings.
Well, John lives down the street from me, so I'll be knocking on his door. So great then. And yeah, thank you, Commissioner Curran, for all your work and for when we came on for, I remember one of the first thing that we did, and I drove out to see it, and who drove up right behind me was Commissioner Curran. And so we were looking at the project together, and so it was only two of us, so it was okay. We were all right. Just checking there. So thank you for that. Thank you for your service.
Yeah, and thank you for your service too. As Tim alluded to, your knowledge of plants and just your organization, your interest in the city. I'm actually sorry that you're leaving the commission, but I understand that you your Pinole Creek beckons you. But I'm sure you do a great job there, and you've done you've only been in one term, but you've done a fantastic job in that one term.
Thank you. Thanks. All right. So I think that takes us. We've done well there. We do have one hand still up. And so now, right before we do our communications, that would be fine, please.
Sounds good. So this is from the person with the phone number ending in 5748. Okay, so you are unmuted, or you're allowed to speak now. So you can unmute by pressing *6. Okay, we can't hear you yet. They are unmuted, but it's not coming across for some reason.
That's unfortunate. And so in that, we're basically there.
Yeah, I don't have an email either, so.
It's up to you, Chair, whether to wait to see if they could restart and see if that fixes it from their side, or we can move on. It's up to you.
I think we'll move on at this point, and to the person who is waiting, I really apologize for the technical difficulties that have gotten in the way of your sharing. And so I hope that what you will do is please submit an email or a phone call to Planning Manager Hannum so that we can take that comment at the beginning of the next meeting, or you can take that comment at the beginning of the next meeting. So thank you for that. We apologize for that again. Any communications?
No communications this time.
Okay. And then our next meeting is scheduled for May 8th at 7 p.m. And so hopefully we'll have that comment from our speaker at that time. And so I would like to adjourn this meeting in honor of Dave Current, and thanks for his work as a volunteer public servant for more than 30 years, and for his work for the city of Pinole as a planning commissioner dedicated for 16 years. So this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Okay.